how to use red light therapy. The wavelengths that have been used for remembering that these devices are usually going to give you an output between about 600 and about 1,000 nanometers. In the studies looking at thyroid in particular, you're looking at between 800 and 850 nanometers. However, you can use a device that includes that range plus goes a little bit wider. And this is what a lot of the devices actually do, is they'll have an output that's broader and will have multiple sort of tissue benefits. So because of that, I recommend a few products, actually two. One is the Platinum LED. They have a Biomax series. They are FDA approved. Their output is between 480 and 1,000 nanometers. So you're going to be right in that sweet spot of hitting the range and also having the 8 to 850 range that's specific to thyroid. The cost here is about $700. There's a smaller device known as the Bon Charge Mini Red Light, also FDA approved, smaller, handheld, therefore cheaper. The wavelength, a little bit narrower, between 660 and 850, and the cost is $299. Now, before I had mentioned some of the shenanigans, and this comes courtesy of a friend of mine when I mentioned we were going to be doing a piece on red light, she asked me about a device she was thinking about buying called the Dermalux Flex. Now, this device has outputs at 415, 630, and 830. So exactly what we've talked about thus far. No difference in the irradiation or the strength, but the cost, $2,500. And I think, again, this comes back to, is there a market for this? Can we market this as a special aesthetic skin device? And you'll see it's sort of this curved dome piece that looks cool. Just be careful. What do they say about a fool and his money? They will soon be parted. And by the way, if this has been helpful, please comment and subscribe. This really does help us reach more people who are trying to improve their health. So it is quite deeply appreciated. The specifics of the protocol, as you see summarized on this slide, the wavelength specifically for thyroid is 800 to 850 nanometers. However, the devices I'm recommending have a broader wavelength from somewhere starting at about 600 up to about 1,000 nanometers that will give you thyroid plus other tissue benefits simultaneously. So again, as noted here on the slide, for those of you looking at the visual, additional wavelengths are okay. We just want to make sure we include the 800 to 850. So check on that. Frequency, 2 to 3 times per week for about 3 months. A little longer is okay. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, once per year. Now, some people may elect to do this more. If you're using red light for overall skin health and anti-aging, for sort of systemic mitochondrial function, and you're using something like a total body panel, then many people routinely are recommending and using red light therapy devices ongoing. If we're talking about the more narrowed use case of just the thyroid gland, especially if you have a smaller device that you're going to apply, let's say right to your neck, then the thyroid only protocol would be 2 to 3 times per week for about 3 months, 1 treatment cycle per year, remembering that other study I mentioned earlier that found the effects for the thyroid specifically maintained for about 11 months. So my view on this, not something that's necessarily been published, but 1 3-month treatment cycle per year for thyroid. But again, if you're using a larger panel and you're trying to get more of a skin anti-aging effect or systemic mitochondrial benefit, let's say for energy and chronic fatigue, then you can do this in an ongoing fashion. At least that's my perspective on this. To my knowledge, there have been no studies that have really looked at applications for well over 6 months. But as long as you're not overdoing it and you're having some days off, I think you're probably okay to continually use red light therapy, because remember, the impact does not last forever. The duration, 10 to 20 minutes per day. And then the distance will impact or dictate the amount of penetration. So the closer you are to the device, the deeper the light is going to penetrate. The farther away from the light, the more superficial or surface level the impact is going to be. So to get sort of the best of both worlds, somewhere around 8 inches away to 14. Again, if you're trying to get a little bit deeper, closer, more superficial, more focused on the skin, a little bit further away. This is just to give you the one feedback point of if you're 3 feet away, that may not be ideal, and you may not need to have the device literally touching your skin. There's always going to be some nuances depending on the device, so cross-reference the materials that come with the device that you buy because duration and distance may vary, but this is just looking at the devices that we've outlined, the general use guidelines. One final point here, monitor your thyroid levels, not because anything bad's going to happen, but the hopeful yay that's coming is, as these studies have found, 30 to 50% of people may not need their thyroid hormone. Now, how this shows up is important in the sense that people may start having an overdose situation because their thyroid gland, thankfully, is making more hormone. But if you continue to take the exogenous, the external hormone as the capsule of whatever you're taking, you may end up having thyroid hormone blood levels that are too high. So if you're noticing, boy, I feel a little bit jittery, hot, I'm not sleeping well, maybe I'm having some palpitations, that is probably not a reaction to the light. It's actually the red light healing your thyroid. Your thyroid's making more hormone. Now you don't need as much of the hormone you're taking. So whether you go direct to consumer and just do your own TSH and free T4 and monitor those, or have your doctor monitor you, depending on access cost, in any case, make sure to be monitored because from at least the handful of studies that have looked at this, some of you, again, thankfully, will not need thyroid hormone any longer.